Well, to discuss this further, we're now joined by the Executive Director of the Accountability Division at Organisation Undoing Tax Abuse, Outer, Adv Stefanie Fick. Adv Fick, thank you so much for your time. Just how big a blow do you think this is for the state's case to have this matter now struck off the roll, especially given that this case was a matter of national significance and not the first major case by the NPA, I would say, to potentially be compromised?
Yeah, I think it's a major blow. I think we can all agree that, this was one of the cases, one of the few cases that was on the roll. It is, I think it had an impact, not only on, government funds, but also the local community. I think we tend to forget that there were a local community that was also affected. And I think it is a big blow. One cannot probably, it's very difficult to criticize a judge in these circumstances. So it's not about criticizing, the judgment. One just wonders if this was the best ending for this case, and hopefully the state will put it back on the roll.
I mean, the defense teams have been lamenting about these delays in, once about a week ago or so, also delays in being furnished with a 5 terabyte hard drive, I would recall, a few days ago, in fact, to access this information and accused, and especially for the accused, the state, the defense, in fact, accused the state of the many delays, since the matter started with the arrests of the accused in 2018 and then, of course, the rearrest in 2022, and et cetera, et cetera. So just to your statement, one can see how the judge was left with no choice but to, in fact, submit this or agree with the submission by the defense in this case.
Yes, may I just say this? I'm going to assume that the judge took that into account. Like I said, it's always, I don't think it's right to necessarily sit and criticize a judge that took all of it into consideration and then come to a different conclusion. But what is a tragedy is we must always remember, when you look at a case like this, although an accused obviously have some rights, the state also has rights. So it's always about balancing of rights. And what I understood some of the complaints to be from the state side is, why do you wait until the trial start to complain about a 5 terabyte hard drive that you can't access? Isn't it logical that you would, maybe go to the state and say, listen, we can't access it, because you have a right. You have a right to the information that the state is going to use in prosecuting your client. But, cases like this, this is a difficult case. I don't think it's one of those cases that you firstly give to a junior prosecutor. We have an advocate, a senior advocate dealing with the prosecution of this matter. A lot of work goes into this matters, and it's not a frivolous prosecution. So in this instance, apparently the rights of the accused weighed more than the rights of the state, who is in fact representing all of us, representing the community that was there, representing the fact that we lost an enormous amount of money. And I think if you look at the facts of this matter, one would really like to see, the individuals being prosecuted. If they are not guilty, let them be found not guilty. But if they are guilty, that there is some accountability of what happened in Estina.
When we go back, to the time, of course, in 2018, where the then public protector, Busisiwe Mkhwebane, made all of these findings in that the Free State Department of Agriculture flouted many procurement processes. There was also the sense that, a witness from India would be called after another witness produced about 100 photographs as part of his evidence. In as far as the state is concerned, could we not have sped up, the processes in as far as their submissions, are concerned? I hear what you're saying in as far as what the defense is saying, but the state really had all of the evidence, it would seem, so the question then again goes, why the delays? Is it a case of not being capacitated enough? And when are we going to come to a time where these high-profile cases are actually prioritized and successfully argued in courts, because at this rate, as you said also and pointed out, the people on the ground who are affected by these cases will not see justice being done.
I agree with you. There's so many issues that one can discuss here, because if you think about just ordinary people, what do they see is that there's just no accountability, and that if you talk to complainants, if you talk to people that are supposed to complain about crimes, are there trust in the system that it will work? One also have to question that these are state capture cases, and unfortunately, we've been waiting a long time for these state capture cases to come to the fore and be prosecuted. But how much trust does that instill, that on a daily basis, communities on a daily basis are faced with a high crime rate? And does that speak to trust again in our institutions, that they can do what they are supposed to do? And I think unfortunately sometimes the answer is no. On the other hand, again, weighing up all the rights and maybe the positives and the negatives, is that I do think that the NPA and the police are under-resourced, and that also comes from state capture. I mean, they made sure that the institutions that are there to hold people to account are under-resourced. Then I also have to say, so although I think the NPA needs to be criticized, but what are we going to do? Doesn't also help just to criticize. So firstly, they need to be resourced. They need to look at the budget. We need to spend more money on our law enforcement and NPA than we spend on the Blue Light Brigade. Secondly, cases like this take an enormous time to investigate. So just under normal circumstances, let's say we had a brilliant investigation team and all the resources that the state need to get this done, it does take some time. Unfortunately, our law works like this. It's an adversarial system, and both sides has got rights, and the judge need to weigh up these rights. So if you were the accused that is faced with these types of crimes, you would like to have all the information, you would like to have discussions with your legal team in order for them to defend you to the best of your abilities. But the same goes for the state. The state also needs an opportunity to make sure that the state that they present, they have one chance, that the state that the case that they have to present is presented properly, and sometimes that takes time.
And I mean, when you look at the high-profile names behind this particular case, especially when you look at the Free State Department of Agriculture, I mean, it does include accused who are former and also current officials at the department. Also, of course, the former MEC, Mosebenzi Zwane, Gupta-associated links as well. And I mean, this featured prominently in the Zondo Commission. One then wonders, what does this then mean for these high-profile individuals in terms of, from an accountability perspective? How important then is it, that we always remember that there are significant charges here that were leveled against these individuals? So how important is it then, particularly when you look at, the Zondo Commission's findings, that, justice is served and that this matter does then return back to the court's role?
Yes, I think it's extremely important. I really think it's extremely important. But may I just add here? So yes, we all want to see all the state capture individuals or suspects, that they go through this process in order for us to understand, are they guilty, not guilty, and that there is some accountability. But, let's think about it. There's also a responsibility with, for example, Parliament. There's also a political responsibility. We tend to think that, everybody needs to go through a criminal, the criminal justice system in order for there to be accountability. And sometimes I think we forget that there is something like ethical leadership. If you have an employee that did something that is wrong, not necessarily criminal, but something that is wrong, obviously you take disciplinary steps. You are not going to wait for a court of law in order to hold a disciplinary hearing to make sure that the employees in your employ is the right persons for the right positions. So I do think that we will also let down. Although this is a letdown, and we would really like to see this case back on the roll, the NPA well-resourced and hopefully have all their ducks in a row in order to prosecute these individuals. But I think, why did we see, for example, SABC Zwane is still in Parliament, leading a portfolio committee? So I think that the letdown is not only in the criminal justice system that I think works perfectly, it's how we use it, but that there's also other types of accountability that we haven't seen. And that goes, for example, in the department, etc.
And of course, there are many other names that we haven't mentioned in this current discussion who also assume leadership roles as well as political roles. But thank you so much for that initial reaction and for your time on the program. All right, that was Advocate Fick from the organisation Undoing Tax Abuse, Advocate Stefanie Fick there for us.